What is Smart Grid? It's a complex opportunity to integrate solutions into one of the most complex machines in the world.
Well, you know, I'm from Google, so I Googled the term Smart Grid. And interestingly, what I found is that there's millions of different views of what the Smart Grid is.
Information is king these days, and the Smart Grid is the opportunity to bring the electric utility industry into the information age.
Those technologies today don't necessarily talk to each other as conveniently as the PC that sits on your desk talks through various components or various programs, and it's about making the grid as easy as that operation as the PC on your desk.
Where we're headed with a smart grid, we're going to have a lot more information.
Technology's here, the environmental need is here, the will politically is here, so now is the time to get started.
I see the grid as the essential enabler of all the good things that are possible that are coming with clean energy, with sustainable mobility, and the interconnection of those things.
We have to figure out how to produce this 2 or 3 times more energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a very large amount, by as much as 80%. Absolutely can't happen without the smart grid.
There's 3 things that we're looking at: enabling more renewables, empowering consumers, and driving efficiency in the energy system.
We're going to have a shift to lower carbon energy. That's absolutely inevitable. The only question is whether it goes relatively smoothly and we have a managed transition to more renewables, more efficiency, or whether we have a somewhat chaotic and unpredictable process.
It's not just about your electricity bill. As I say, it's about job creation, it's about clean energy, renewable energy, plug-in hybrid vehicles. All of these are dependent on what is known as a smart grid.
Smart grid is critical to helping us break our dependence on foreign oil because it is a key enabler to deep penetration of renewable energy.
Why smart grid? Why now? It's a perfect storm, and it's totally undefined.
The coolest thing about the smart grid is that it's not clearly defined, and in 5 years from now we're going to be surprised at what we see.
The moment is now because of the confluence of security concerns, reliability issues with the environmental, climate change concerns, and we add these together and you see that we've reached a tipping point.
I think the engagement of the consumer is critical. At the end of the day, this is about the consumer.
Either this really helps consumers improve the quality of service, improve their quality of life, reduce the cost of electricity, reduce emissions, or it won't be successful. So I think consumer empowerment, consumer benefits is really key to smart grid.
We believe that by providing customers with access to information and giving them the ability to understand what the implications are of their decisions, that will empower customers to actually make some proactive choices.
I really believe customers want to use our limited natural resources wisely. No one wants to be wasteful.
Proactive choices such as moving electricity from the peak period into the off-peak period when it's actually less expensive to generate power.
The technology is certainly there to do it.
I think where it starts to break down a bit is the regulatory issues.
This requires cooperation among 50 states, several hundred utilities, a variety of industries who have the technology and want to invest, millions of ratepayers.
Without some unanimity, it's difficult to get any of this accomplished.
The single most important thing that any regulator or legislator could do is to ensure that either the words smart grid or energy efficiency are part of the renewable energy standards of any state.
Government can impose mandates that encourage the demand for the technology. If we priced carbon, that would increase demand for the technology. If we had a national renewable energy standard, that would increase demand. If we had a national efficiency standard, that would increase demand.
If you give people the right incentives and the right information through the smart grid and all the innovations we're talking about, the amount of creativity it will unleash and the innovation and change will be substantial. It will be a major change.
Today we have a business model, in the U.S. in particular,
where everybody is rewarded for selling more electricity.
As we encourage energy efficiency, how do we ensure that we still make a profit, despite the fact we're encouraging people to use less of our product?
I think the biggest obstacle to the modernization of the grid is really our ability to quickly develop standards, interoperability, in terms of how we build out the digital grid. Interoperability, plug and play, standardization is key to our ability to take this to scale.
We're the richest country on earth, and we're the most innovative on many regards. But when it comes to energy, we can learn a lot. And I think our legacy assets and old ways of thinking are what hold us back.
You're going to have business and solutions stepping up. You're going to have government or regulatory stepping up. You're absolutely going to have customers step up.
So we're going to have to get better at educating the customers, educating the stakeholders, educating the regulators on exactly how much this will cost and where the value proposition is.
I think the most exciting thing is that this industry, which has been black labeled as the least innovative, slowest moving industry, is finally starting to change. This is the kind of transformation we haven't seen in this industry since the turn of the century. Turn of the last century, that is.
There are smart grid pilot projects in places like Miami, Boulder, Austin, Texas, a lot of activity in California, but many major cities do not have significant smart grid deployments at this point.
Piecing together a system that works in theory and works in practice, that exploits the information in the smart grid, and it provides sustained incentives for innovation is the real challenge in order to deal with climate change, the fossil fuel concerns, renewable energy, and so on.
You have the opportunity to have solar energy, and when you're not using the energy, you can feed it back to the utility and you can be paid for that power generation.
To me, the single most exciting thing about the smart grid is how it will transform the transportation industry. But the big thing that changes it is taking carbon out of transportation. And the only way we can do that is getting off gasoline and diesel and going onto electricity. And without the transactional ability of the smart grid, we aren't going to be able to do that.
With a smart grid, you have the opportunity to have a plug-in hybrid and have the system be smart enough to only charge your car when the rates are cheapest.
And it turns out that if you plug in at night, you can actually charge about 70% of all the cars in the U.S. could be charged at night without building any more power plants or adding any more transmission or adding any more distribution. And if you could get to that number, you'd reduce the amount of imported oil coming into the U.S. by 6 million barrels a day.
Government funding can best be spent to accelerate the smart grid by doing large-scale deployments where we can really prove out and scale the benefits that we firmly believe will be offered by a smarter grid.
A smart grid is where we need to go.
The toothpaste is out of the tube, and we've got to do it.
Now is the time for smart grid.
Now.
Information.
Potential.
Convergence.
Essential.
Consumer empowerment.
Transformative change.
Success.
Exciting.
Empowering.
Necessity.
Information.
Smart.